I'm going to be making reference to a diagram which is called planes of consciousness. And it brings together various concepts. It's a construct. And it's presented to you as an idea to work with. Planes of consciousness brings together two ideas. The idea of consciousness to begin with. We have to talk for a moment what we mean by this. And the idea that it can be viewed as being layered, as it were, as having levels or segments, which is in itself a slightly strange idea. Consciousness, after all, is a totality. It's a whole thing. But what is it? What is consciousness? Is it related to awareness, for instance? Is it above awareness? If you're creating a hierarchy, would you put consciousness first and then awareness? And then you could subdivide awareness into, from a human point of view, for sure, you could divide it into the different ways in which awareness is experienced through the senses. And there would obviously be 5 senses, special organs that are developed in order to connect the inside, which is consciousness, with the outside through vision and hearing and touch and taste and smell, so on. So it's one of those sort of attempts to bring many things together that are aspects of consciousness, which is a totality and actually not divisible. But so I'm just saying the very title, Planes of Consciousness, is you could take exception to it. You could say consciousness is the totality, and it isn't even individualized. Consciousness you could think of as being the common isness of all sentient beings. Sentient meaning they have awareness. Is a stone conscious, for instance? Because clearly it's not a sentient being. But does it have consciousness? You see, some people would suggest that maybe it does. So these are the definitions are attempts at understanding totality through division, that the purpose of which is to help us gain a understanding of who it is that is having the consciousness. And very specifically, who is this patient in front of us? And what is it that is, wherein lies the sickness? The sickness won't be at the top level of universal consciousnness, clearly. Either that'll be present, that's it's not there. You have to step one below. And in this diagram, to give the idea of above and below, I have written heaven above and earth below. So closest to heaven in this diagram is the idea of spirit. And it's written the aspect of the universal which is known to man. And you could describe it as a feature in the psyche that we will call intuition or inspiration. Inspiration actually means the breath inside, the inner breath. But the idea of being inspired, it's where you know something as if from within, because it's inspired, it's like an in-breath of knowing. And it's so general that it's difficult to say too much about it. People might say that it's luminous, it's like light, an experience of light. And if there's something wrong with a person, if a patient comes into you and there's something wrong at this level, this is truly of importance to note. It's the highest level. This is what needs, this level is the level where the cure needs to happen from. It's not like I have an ingrown toenail. It's much more fundamental. And if sickness is at that level, we need to know that. It would be foolish to say that one remedy has this more than another remedy has it, because it's universal. Every remedy must connect at this level. But if the sickness in the human being in front of you, the patient, is at this level, then that's where you must focus your attention, not at the toenail. Right, the next one is written here, will. So, but it's below spirit is will, and it's written the energy of intention and the highest level of desiring. So, most important here is the level of intention. When you will a thing, if there's a problem here, the individual, the patient, will not be able to achieve anything because they'll have no sense of achievement. They'll have no sense of going from A to B. There will be no willpower to do anything. There won't even be the will to lift your foot off the ground. You become a willness being, a being without willness, which is fundamental. If the sickness is here, that's what you have to attend to. It's obvious. It'll probably be something to do with higher mental functioning or the central nervous system or something like that. It's obvious. There is a mental body. This is something that humans have to a high level of development. Well, relatively high. I mean, there's a lot of grey matter in that brain box, and it defines much about us. We would say that this distinguishes us from the animal kingdom. The mental function can be divided into parts, of which the simplest is, think of the abstract mind, which reasons, it has ideas, it has imagination, and the concrete mind, which has memory. And so if there are dysfunctions in our patient at this level, this is where we need to focus our attention. And as again, as I say, it's ridiculous to think of certain remedies as being more this way than that, yet we do. We would say that that there's an affinity in certain remedies to cause or be resonant with dysfunctions of this kind or that kind. And in this case, if it's to do with will and understanding, it's a fundamental dysfunction and it needs to be paid attention to primarily. You, once again, won't go with the ingrowing toenail here, you'll go with this as being the most important thing. And apropos of the ingrowing toenail, wouldn't it be nice if the ingrowing toenail could be seen as being a symbolic representation at the physical level, in the foot, of the dysfunction that is at this higher level? After all, we are one being, and we express in all parts of ourselves the one being that is healthy or is sick. Good. Humankind describes itself as Homo sapiens, and sapiens means thinking or having awareness. So if there's a problem at this level, that needs our undivided attention. Animals have an astral body too. They don't have a mental body so well developed. Maybe not developed at all, hardly developed. The astral level is another way of saying the emotional level. It's the desires, it's the level at which desires and aversions play themselves out, first of all. So, I like a thing. I gravitate towards it. I put my hand out and grab it. I like it. Or I dislike a thing and I distance myself from it. Get as far away from it as possible because it's distasteful to me. It's a very, very powerful level. Most of us actually operate at this level, most of the time. It's not the level of thought or contemplation or wisdom. It's got nothing to do with that. It's to do with reacting. And it ensures our survival. Very important. And I wrote here that it's colourful. ever-changing. It's a feeling reality. And if we don't have it, we won't be feeling alive. There are some people who are so centered in their higher mental functioning and so little aware of their emotional that they actually don't feel alive. They go off into an isolated bubble of thought and perform there, and they're not obviously engaging with life. Such people are often quite isolated from others who are operating at the astral level. If we watch drama, this is the level that's being played out. Pretty much all drama is dramatic because it is an investigation of the astral level and draws us in at that level. And our response is, let's give a very, very simple response, it's just a fright and fight or flight response. And it has us producing adrenaline and feeling alive. That's why we like those activities that stimulate this response within us, because we feel very alive then. I'm afraid it's also why we like war. There are some people who actually do like the combat situation. They like that to be stimulated in that way. There are lots of other reasons for liking war, of course. It's a group project, so you have the group interaction. You all work together towards an end which is defined. So there are lots of reasons for liking war. But on the battlefield, you either shrink away from it and may even become paralyzed into non-action because of what you witness on the battlefield, or you go and fight, and it's very exciting. It's a live and die situation. Nothing can be more exciting than that from a survival point of view, obviously. Animals are all about this. They work at this level. Well, so do vegetables, actually. But it's less obvious because they don't have organs of locomotion and everything happens much more gradually, so it's not so obvious. What they do have, and what all living beings have, is an etheric body, which is often described as an energy field or a template for the physical body. And I wrote the little note that Kirlian photography is a way of making that visible. There are other ways of making it visible too. And anyway, you don't actually need any apparatus at all. It becomes obvious because of many things that we experience, but we don't often tune into it. We can say more about that later. When we conduct provings, we'll be saying a lot about it and indeed experiencing it at a very first hand, that level, and all the others, well, and the astral, but very much at this level. I believe it to be that the homeopathic remedy kind of tunes into this level very much. And not so much at the physical, but very much at this level, through which everything else is mediated. It's like a mediation between the higher levels and the physical level. A template, if you will. And then, of course, there's the physical body, which is the chemical organization of matter, brings in the mineral kingdom, and is the very stuff of earth, which is earth below in this diagram, going up to heaven above. And the humankind, animal kind, vegetable kind, and mineral kind also fit in there. And missed out, sort of between mineral and vegetable, are the fungi and the bacteria and the viruses that go in there as well. So it is kind of obvious that you wouldn't be treating the virus. You'd be treating the humankind who is being influenced by the virus. And especially, of course, if that influence is a deleterious one. You'll be treating the human, not the virus. We don't have remedies for the flu. We have remedies for humans who are suffering from the flu. And because the experience of the flu will be individual for each, there'll be many remedies. But the flu is the causative agent for the flu is a virus, ever mutating, ever changing. But at one particular time, there is likely to be a dominant strain. And so for this strain, you can say that the virus overwhelms the human, and therefore the symptoms of humans will have a degree of similarity. So you can then select some remedies that have this generic similarity and say that these are the remedies to individualize from amongst these remedies that cover the general pattern of the flu. There will be some which are individually appropriate. It means you're looking maybe at 10 remedies rather than 1,000, which is very helpful for the physician. Good. And as ever, you're not treating the virus. You're treating the human, the individual. Yay, so is planes of consciousness helpful? Well, if you have made any previous studies in what used to be called the occult, then it will be useful. The occult is basically it means that it's been hidden. It's hidden knowledge. It's not knowledge that is common to the populace, whoever they are. They will be concerned with other things. The occult is for the investigators. So in any random group of people, there'll be some who'll be investigators, and there'll be people who might have been interested in the occult. These days they might be interested in psychology, and maybe moving towards parapsychology. Jung, of course, Carl Gustav Jung, was a psychologist who investigated the occult, you might say, most of his life. It broke away from Freud because of this difference, because Freud wanted to be rooted in the so-called scientific methodology of psychoanalysis, and got quite rigid with it. Not just with the sexual aspect in psychoanalysis, but the whole thing was proposed as a science. And Jung said, well, there's certain things that don't fit into this limited view and need to be opened out. So he developed language too, which is very helpful for homeopaths to study. So I would recommend you to the work of Jung. If you haven't already come from that direction, it's worthy of your attention. So, there's so much, isn't there? It's huge. It's huge. It's a lifetime of investigation. Never a boring moment.